The air in the Manhattan penthouse was thin, cold, and smelled like expensive lilies and desperation. I stood in the foyer, my hands folded across my simple gray uniform. I hadn't seen this face in 20 years. Sophia, my daughter. She didn't recognize me. Why would she? The last time she saw me, I was the woman she'd left behind in a dusty Georgia town, the woman she'd called a drain on her potential. Now I was just employee 402 from the Elite Shine Agency. I had used a little makeup to deepen the lines on my face, a pair of thick-rimmed glasses, and a wig that made me look like I'd spent my life scrubbing floors, which, in a way, I had. "You're late," Sophia snapped. She didn't look at my face. She was looking at her reflection in the gold-trimmed mirror, adjusting a pair of earrings that cost more than a house in the Midwest. "The subway was delayed, ma'am," I said. My voice was raspy, a performance I'd practiced for weeks. "I don't care about the subway. I have the autumn gala here in 3 days. Every billionaire, every developer, and every socialite in New York will be in this room. If there is a single speck of dust on the molding, you won't get paid. In fact, I'll sue your agency for professional negligence." She turned around finally, and for a split second, our eyes met. My heart hammered against my ribs. I wondered if she saw the mother who used to tuck her in. I wondered if she saw the woman who sold her wedding ring to pay for Sophia's first year at NYU, the year Sophia stopped taking my calls. She didn't. She just saw a servant. "The marble in the bathroom," Sophia said, her voice dripping with disdain. "The previous cleaners used a mop. Disgusting. I want the grout lines cleaned, personally." She reached into a nearby drawer and tossed something at me. It clattered against my chest and fell to the floor. A toothbrush. "On your knees, 402, she whispered, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "I want to see my face in the grout. If you're as elite as the agency claims, this shouldn't be a problem." I looked at the toothbrush. I looked at the daughter I had raised to be kind, to be better. Somewhere along the way, the city had swallowed her soul and replaced it with chrome and ice. Before I tell you why I took that toothbrush, before I reveal the secret about who really owns the Elite Shine Agency, I have to ask you, where are you watching from right now? Are you at work? Are you at home? Are you feeling like someone is looking down on you today? Drop your city and your current mood in the comments. I'm reading this from a penthouse balcony, and I want to know who is standing here with me. Because what Sophia didn't know was that I wasn't there for the hourly wage. I was there to decide whether or not to take everything she owned away from her. As I knelt down to start scrubbing, Sophia's phone rang. She answered it, and her face went from arrogant to deathly pale in 3 seconds. "What do you mean the bridge loan was denied?" she hissed. I focused on the grout. Scrub, rinse, repeat. My knees ached against the hard marble, but I didn't move. I listened. This was the first rule of being invisible. People talk when they think the furniture can't hear. "You can't deny the loan." Sophia was pacing now, her heels clicking like a countdown clock. "The Fent house is collateral. I have a buyer lined up. A billionaire from the UK is coming to the gala to sign the papers." She paused, listening to the person on the other end. Her hand was shaking so hard she nearly dropped her phone. "I don't care about the market volatility. If I don't show the bank that I have the deposit by Friday, they'll start foreclosure. That's impossible. Do you know who I am?" I kept scrubbing. I knew exactly who she was. She was a woman who had built a life on credit, lies, and the backs of people she thought were beneath her. She had spent 20 years pretending her parents were dead European royalty. She had reinvented herself as Sophia Vance, the it girl of Manhattan real estate. But the truth was catching up. The high-rises she'd invested in were empty. Her influencer lifestyle was a house of cards, and the only thing that could save her was selling this very penthouse to a mysterious buyer who went by the name MR Global. "Listen to me," Sophia hissed into the phone, her voice cracking. "I'll get the money. I'll make sure the gala is perfect. The buyer will see the lifestyle, they'll see the prestige, and they'll sign. Just give me 72 hours." She hung up and let out a guttural scream of frustration. She looked down at me. I hadn't stopped. I was still there, a gray ghost on the floor. "Why are you still here?" she shouted. "Go to the kitchen. This silver needs polishing. And if I see you looking at me again, I'll have you thrown out on the street." "Yes, ma'am," I whispered. I stood up slowly, my back popping. I walked toward the kitchen, but I took the long way, through the hallway lined with photos. There was one photo, tucked away in a dark corner, of Sophia at 20. She looked happy. She was holding a cheap trophy from a community college debate. I remember that day. I'd worked 3 shifts at the diner to buy her the dress she was wearing. "Margaret?" I froze. A man was standing at the end of the hallway. It was Julian, Sophia's business manager. He was the one who knew. He was the one who had helped me set this all up. "Not now, Julian," I breathed as I passed him. "She's desperate, Margaret," he whispered, leaning in as if checking a light fixture. "She's planning to embezzle the deposit the moment the buyer signs. She's not just broke, she's becoming a criminal." I stopped. I looked at the silver tray on the counter. "Then we don't just buy the building, Julian," I said, my real voice returning for a split second, strong and cold. "We let her dig the hole until she can't see the sky." The second day was worse. Sophia had invited 2 potential investors for a private dinner to show off the penthouse. I was tasked with serving. I wore the white gloves and the little lace cap, the ultimate costume of the unheard. The guests were a pair of sharks named Sterling and Hayes. They smelled like cigars and old money. Sophia was on now. Her voice was 3 octaves higher, full of fake laughter and darlings. "Oh, this old place," Sophia said, waving a hand at the 40-foot ceilings. "It's a bit small for my tastes now. I'm looking at a vineyard in Tuscany. That's why I'm letting MR Global take this off my hands." "I heard MR Global is ruthless," Hay said, cutting into his steak. "They don't just buy properties, they buy lives. Whoever is behind that firm is the most powerful ghost in the city." Sophia laughed, but I saw the sweat on her upper lip. "Oh, I'm sure we'll get along famously. Power recognizes power." I stepped forward to refill her wine. My hand was steady, but as I poured, Sophia leaned back suddenly, laughing at a joke Sterling made. The wine bottle tipped. A single drop, barely a quarter inch, landed on the sleeve of her white silk blouse. The table went silent. Sophia didn't scream, she didn't shout, she just turned and looked at me. The look in her eyes wasn't anger, it was pure, unadulterated hatred. It was the look you give an insect that has ruined a picnic. "You clumsy, stupid cow," she whispered. "I am so sorry, ma'am," I said, reaching for a napkin. "Let me—" She slapped my hand away. The sound was like a whip cracking. "Don't touch me. Get out of this room right now." She turned back to her guests, her face instantly transforming back into a mask of polite embarrassment. "I am so sorry, gentlemen. It's so hard to find good help these days. They're all so uneducated." I retreated to the kitchen. My hand where she'd slapped me was stinging, but my heart was breaking. I sat on a small stool in the pantry, the darkness wrapping around me. Is this what I had created? I had worked so hard to give her everything so she would never have to feel small. And in return, she had become the person who makes everyone else feel small. I pulled a small encrypted tablet from my apron. I tapped a few keys. MR Global account active. Current assets $4.2 billion. Target property 888 Park Avenue penthouse. I looked at the buy button. It was right there. I could have ended this in a second. I could have had her evicted by midnight. But I needed her to see it. I needed her to understand that the servant she slapped was the only thing standing between her and a prison cell. A knock came at the service door. It was Julian. He looked frantic. "Margaret, we have a problem. Sophia just called the agency. She's demanding you be replaced tonight. She wants you fired permanently." "She wants me fired?" I asked, a cold, thin smile touching my lips. "She's on the phone with the owner of Elite Shine right now," Julian said, checking over his shoulder as if the very walls of the penthouse had ears. "She doesn't know you own the agency, Margaret, but she's threatening to blackball the company from every high-end building in New York unless they destroy your career. She wants you in the dirt." "Let her try," I said. I felt a strange sense of calm, the kind of calm that comes right before a hurricane. "Julian, call the agency office. Tell them to fire me. Make it loud. Make sure she hears every word of my professional execution." "Margaret, are you sure? We could just reveal it now." "No, because when she thinks I have nothing left, when she thinks she's successfully crushed an old woman's livelihood, that's when she'll show her true face to the world. I want to see how deep she'll dig this grave." 10 minutes later, the speakerphone in the foyer was blaring. I stood in the hallway, shrouded in the shadows of a $10,000 velvet curtain, watching Sophia. She stood triumphantly by the marble console, her face lit with a predatory glow. "Yes," Sophia said into the phone, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "I want her fired. I want her blacklisted. I want her to never work in this city again. She's a liability. She's incompetent. And frankly, she's a disgusting woman who doesn't know her place." "We understand, Miss Vance. Employee 402 will be terminated immediately. We will send a replacement for the gala tomorrow evening." Sophia hung up and let out a sigh of pure ecstatic satisfaction. She looked over and saw me walking out of the kitchen, carrying my small, worn bag of belongings. "You heard them," Sophia said, her eyes flashing with malice. "You're done. Get out of my house. And if I ever see you near Park Avenue again, I'll have the police arrest you for stalking. You're a nobody, 402. Remember that." I stopped at the door. I took off the thick-rimmed glasses I'd been wearing. I looked at her, really looked at her with the eyes of the mother who had once stayed up all night sewing her prom dress. "You have so much, Sophia." My voice was no longer the raspy, broken tone of a servant. It was deep, resonant, and terrifyingly calm. "You've traded your heart for a zip code." "How dare you call me by my name?" she shrieked, her face contorting. "Get out." I walked out into the cold New York rain. I didn't take a taxi. I walked 3 blocks to a waiting black limousine parked in a loading zone. Julian was already inside, tapping on a tablet. "The gala is tomorrow night. The buyer, the legendary MR Global, is expected at 9 p.m. The bank is already calling Sophia's lawyers. They know she's underwater." "I'm changing the plan, Julian." I looked at the rain-streaked window. "I don't want to just buy the penthouse. I want to buy her debt. I want to be the one who owns her mortgage, her car, and the very air she breathes. Call Mr. Henderson at First National. Tell him I'm buying the bridge loan, cash, tonight." Julian's eyes went wide. That's $40 million in liquid cash, Margaret. If you do this, you become her only creditor. You can evict her with a single signature. I looked at my reflection in the dark glass. Then get me a pen. The night of the autumn gala arrived with a chilling Manhattan wind. The penthouse was transformed into a glittering palace of glass and gold. Tables were draped in silk, and the scent of $500 lilies fought with the smell of expensive perfume. Sophia was at the center of it all. She wore a $50,000 gown of crimson silk, a dress I knew she hadn't paid for. She moved through the crowd of developers, senators, and socialites like a queen, but I could see the cracks in her mask. Every time a waiter walked by, she flinched. Every time her phone buzzed in her clutch, her hand shook. She was waiting for MR Global. The mysterious billionaire buyer was her only hope. If the contract wasn't signed by midnight, the bank would freeze her accounts, and the world would know Sophia Vance was a fraud. "Everything is perfect, Miss Vance," Julian whispered as he passed her, holding a clipboard. "The buyer is on their way, but there's a slight issue with the staff." "What now?" Sophia hissed, her smile never reaching her eyes as she nodded to a passing investor. "The replacement maid the agency sent. She's a bit green." Sophia's eyes narrowed. "I don't care if she's from the moon. Just make sure she stays out of the way. If I see a single smudge on the crystal, I'll lose my mind." What Sophia didn't know was that the replacement was Lily, a young girl from my agency who had been specifically instructed to be the most incompetent servant in New York history. It was a psychological war, and I was the general. As the music swelled and the champagne flowed, I was sitting in a suite 3 floors below, watching the security cameras. I watched Sophia lie. I watched her brag about her charitable foundations that didn't exist. I watched her laugh with people who would forget her name the moment she lost her zip code. "It's almost time," Sarah said, stepping into the room. She was holding a garment bag. Inside was a custom-tailored suit in charcoal wool and a necklace of black pearls that Arthur had bought for me years ago, hidden away for a day like this. "Is the bank president here?" I asked. "Mr. Henderson just arrived. He's in the VIP lounge. He's waiting for your signal." I stood up. I felt a weight in my chest, not of guilt, but of gravity. I was about to break my own daughter to see if I could find the girl I used to love underneath the wreckage. I looked at the screen. Lily had just accidentally spilled a tray of appetizers near a group of reporters. Sophia was moving toward her, her face turning a dark, dangerous purple. "It's starting," I whispered. The spill was the spark that lit the fire. Sophia didn't just reprimand Lily, she humiliated her in front of the New York Post society columnist. She called the girl trailer trash and subhuman. The room went quiet for a heartbeat before the high society chatter rushed back in to cover the awkwardness. But the damage was done. The perfect image was fracturing. Sophia retreated to the kitchen, dragging Lily by the arm. "You are going to stay in here and scrub the grease off the vents until this party is over. Do you understand me? You're lucky I don't call the police and claim you stole my jewelry." Lily, playing her part perfectly, began to cry. "I'm sorry, ma'am. It was an accident." "Accidents are for poor people," Sophia screamed. She stormed back into the gala, her chest heaving. She needed a win. She needed the buyer. She spotted Mr. Henderson, the bank president, standing by the balcony. She practically ran to him. Mr. Henderson, she chirped, her voice trembling. So glad you could make it. We're just waiting for the MR Global representative to finalize the paperwork. Everything is on track for the payoff tomorrow. Henderson looked at her with a mix of pity and professional coldness. He didn't take the glass of champagne she offered. Miss Vance, he said, his voice low, I'm afraid there's been a development. The bank no longer holds your bridge loan. Sophia froze. The glass in her hand tilted dangerously. What? What do you mean? Did you sell it to a hedge fund? I told you I needed more time. It wasn't sold to a fund, Sophia, Henderson said. It was purchased by a private individual. As of 4 o'clock this afternoon, you no longer owe First National a dime. For a second, Sophia's face lit up with hope. Oh, someone bought it? A secret investor? Oh, thank God. Who is it? Is it the buyer? Is it MR Global? I'm not at liberty to say, Henderson replied, but I was instructed to tell you that your new creditor is present tonight, and they are very interested in your performance. Sophia's head spun. She looked around the room. Every face looked like a threat. Every smile looked like a trap. She thought she was the hunter, but she was starting to realize she was the one in the crosshairs. 9 o'clock struck. The heavy double doors of the penthouse foyer swung open. The announcer stepped forward, his voice cutting through the jazz music. Ladies and gentlemen, the principal of MR Global has arrived. The room went silent. This was the moment Manhattan had been waiting for. MR Global was the ghost that had been buying up half of the West Side, yet nobody had ever seen a face. Sophia smoothed her dress, her heart practically visible through the silk of her bodice. She stood at the top of the grand staircase, the gold pen gripped in her hand like a weapon. She was ready to play the role of her life. Welcome, Sophia called out, her voice echoing. We are so honored to... She stopped. The woman walking through the door wasn't a British billionaire. She wasn't an oil tycoon from Dubai. It was me. I walked into the light of the massive crystal chandelier. I wasn't wearing the gray uniform. I wasn't wearing the glasses. I was wearing the charcoal suit that cost more than Sophia's car, and the black pearls glowed against my skin. Behind me walked Julian and 2 men in dark suits who didn't look like they were there for the hors d'oeuvres. Sophia's jaw dropped. She actually stumbled back, her heel catching on the carpet. You? She whispered, the word barely audible. What are you doing here? Guards, security, get this woman out of here. She's the maid I fired yesterday. The guards didn't move. They stood like statues. I'm afraid the guards report to me now, Sophia, I said. My voice was calm, projecting to the very back of the room. And I believe you're mistaken. I wasn't the maid. I was the owner of the agency. I just wanted to see the quality of your hospitality firsthand. A murmur swept through the room. Cameras began to flash. The society columnist was frantically typing on her phone. You're MR Global? Sophia gasped, her face turning a ghastly shade of gray. No, that's impossible. My mother is a nobody from Georgia. You're a fraud. You're trying to ruin me. I didn't have to try, Sophia. I walked slowly up the stairs. Every step I took felt like a year of the 20 years she'd ignored me. You ruined yourself. You built a life on the idea that people are disposable. You thought the woman scrubbing your floors didn't have a name. Well, she does. And today, she's the one holding the deed to your life. I reached the top of the stairs and stood inches from her. She smelled of fear. Mr. Henderson, I called out, never taking my eyes off my daughter. Tell the room who owns the debt for this penthouse. Henderson stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. The $40 million bridge loan for 888 Park Avenue is held in its entirety by Margaret Vance, doing business as MR Global. I reached out and took the gold pen from Sophia's paralyzed hand. I believe you were waiting for a signature. Then I did something that made the entire room gasp. I didn't sign the contract. I threw the pen over the balcony, watching it fall 30 stories into the dark. "Why?" she shrieked, the mask finally shattering. She didn't care about the guests anymore. She didn't care about the cameras. She was a cornered animal. "Why would you do this to me? I'm your daughter. I worked so hard to get here. I survived without you." "You didn't survive without me, Sophia," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that felt like ice. "I paid your tuition. I paid your first 3 years of rent in this city through an anonymous trust. I made sure every firm you interviewed at knew you were highly recommended. I didn't leave you. You left me because you were ashamed of a woman who worked with her hands." I turned to the guests, who were watching this Greek tragedy unfold with morbid fascination. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said loudly, "I apologize for the disruption, but the sale of this penthouse is canceled. In fact, the foreclosure process begins at midnight. Since I am the sole creditor, I've decided to move in immediately. Julian, please escort the guests to the elevators. The party is over." It was a massacre. Within 15 minutes, the friends Sophia had spent a decade cultivating were gone. They didn't offer her a place to stay. They didn't offer her a coat. They scurried away like rats from a sinking ship, terrified that their own reputations would be tarnished by the Vance scandal. Sophia was left standing in the middle of the empty ballroom, surrounded by half-eaten shrimp and lukewarm champagne. She looked at her reflection in the darkened windows. She looked like a ghost. "What am I supposed to do?" she asked, her voice small and broken. "I have nothing. I have no money. I have no place to go." "You have exactly what you gave me, Sophia," I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the toothbrush she had tossed at me on the first day. I set it on the silk-draped table. "You said you wanted to see your face in the grout? Well, tonight, you're going to see who you really are. You can stay here tonight, one night, in the servants' quarters." "You're heartless," she sobbed, collapsing onto a chair. "No," I said, looking out at the skyline I now owned. "I'm a mother, and sometimes a mother has to burn the garden down to get rid of the weeds." As I walked toward the master suite, Julian stopped me. "Margaret, the press is outside, and there's someone else, a man claiming to be Sophia's fiancé. He says he has a legal claim to the assets." I paused. I hadn't known about a fiancé. The fiancé was a man named Victor Sterling, the same man I'd seen at the dinner of lies. He burst into the room, looking for a payday. He didn't look at Sophia. He went straight for the mahogany desk where the legal folders were kept. "I have a signed prenuptial agreement that guarantees me 20% of the sale price of this property," Victor shouted. "I don't care who the buyer is. Pay me or I'll sue this estate into the next century." Sophia looked at him, her eyes wide with a new kind of pain. "Victor, you're here for the money? I thought you loved me. You said we were going to Tuscany." Victor didn't even look at her. "Tuscany costs money, Sophia, and you're a broke maid's daughter. Now move aside." I watched this unfold from the doorway. This was the final lesson. I wanted Sophia to see the quality of the people she had chosen over her own blood. "Mr. Sterling," I said, stepping forward, "I've reviewed that agreement. It's based on a sale, but as I said, there was no sale. I bought the debt. There are no proceeds to share. In fact, since you co-signed on several of Sophia's luxury car leases, I believe you are now personally liable for nearly $200,000 in arrears, to me." Victor's face went white. He looked at Sophia, then back at me. He didn't say a word. He turned on his heel and ran for the elevator, leaving his fiancée without a second glance. Sophia let out a laugh, a jagged, hollow sound. "He didn't even say goodbye," she whispered. "He never loved you, Sophia," I said, sitting down across from her. "He loved the illusion, and illusions don't have a heartbeat." The room was silent for a long time. The only sound was the hum of the city far below. "What happens tomorrow?" Sophia asked. "Tomorrow," I said, "you're going to pack a bag. One bag. Only things you bought with money you actually earned. Which, by my count, means you're taking a pair of sneakers and a sweatshirt from college. And then, we go to Georgia, to the diner where I used to work. They need a dishwasher, Sophia. It pays $12 an hour. It's hard work. It's dirty work. But at the end of the day, the money is yours. And for the first time in your life, you won't be a fraud." Sophia looked at the toothbrush on the table. She picked it up. She didn't throw it. She gripped it until her knuckles turned white. "I'll do it," she whispered, "but only if you don't help me. I don't want your MR Global money." I smiled. My daughter was finally back. It's been a year since the gala. The Park Avenue penthouse is now the Arthur Vance Foundation for Working Mothers. It's a place where women can stay while they get their degrees, with a world-class childcare center in what used to be the ballroom. And Sophia? She's in a small town outside of Savannah. She's not a dishwasher anymore. She worked her way up to head waitress, and last month she took out a small, honest loan, not from me, but from a local credit union, to buy a tiny catering van. She calls me every Sunday. We don't talk about real estate. We talk about the best way to season a pot of collard greens. We talk about the sunrise. She sounds happy. She sounds like the girl who used to sew sequins on her own trophies. I'm sitting on my porch now, watching the Georgia heat shimmer off the road. I still have the billions. I still own half of Manhattan. But the most valuable thing I own is a handwritten letter from Sophia that arrived yesterday. It said, "Mama, thank you for firing me. I finally like the woman I see in the mirror." And that, my friends, is the story of the hired mother. It's a story about the fact that sometimes the greatest act of love is a moment of absolute truth. But I want to ask you, what would you have done? If your child treated you like a servant, would you have bought their debt and sent them to work in a diner? Or was I too harsh? I really want to know your thoughts on this one. Is there a Sophia in your life? Someone who has forgotten where they came from? Drop a comment below. I'm reading every single one, and I love seeing how our community tackles these big life questions. Where are you watching from today? Let's see how far this story has traveled. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think about the invisible people in your own life, then please like this video. It helps find more people who need to hear this message. Subscribe to Voices of Stephanie and hit that notification bell. We're building a space here for stories that matter, stories with depth, heart, and a little bit of bite. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that your worth isn't in your bank account, it's in your character. This is Voices of Stephanie, and I am so grateful you spent this time with me. I'll see you in the next story. Goodbye for now.